So before doing the next one, where I look at races 4 to 6 of the season, which is Spain, Monaco and Azerbaijan, I thought I'd just take you through this video with Karun Chandok again, so you actually get to see the on-track footage. This way, I hope by playing you this video that's already on YouTube, there's a less chance of me trying to do it using F1 TV footage and it getting blocked. So we'll go through this again, and you'll see the footage, you'll see the incidents, but again, we'll talk about what Karun Chandok says. Karun analyses Lewis and Max's wheel-to-wheel battles this season, so you can check that video out on YouTube yourself if you so want to. But here it is. So he analyses, this first one is Imola.
Well, I've picked 6 different clips, Nat, because I was thinking about something Damon said actually in Saudi, which was Max had an uncompromising style of racing wheel to wheel. And
that in itself is a validation, okay? You can't be uncompromising. When you're on track racing fellow competitors, there has to be the acknowledgement of give and take. That is sport. If they have got the position, if they've done what they need to do to get their car in a position where you have to yield, then you have to yield. That is why you have rules of engagement. This notion of uncompromising, well, what does that mean? It means you can just drive round not caring about anybody else around you, and if anybody else challenges you, you'll just ram them off the track. Is that uncompromising? Well, that's not allowed. But that's the way you're describing, oh, Max is just uncompromising. Well, no. If there's another car trying to overtake you, you're not just allowed to run it off the track or just put yourself on a collision course with it. And if it doesn't move, there's going to be a crash. Oh, that's just Max being uncompromising. Well, that's not acceptable. Call it out for not being acceptable. But instead of calling it out as not being acceptable, you classify, you create this term saying, oh, he's uncompromising. Oh, strap-on fanboys, you'll like that about him. You'll like that aggressive nature. You'll like this shit or bust attitude, won't you? Yes, you'll like the fact that he tries to bully other cars off the road. How many other drivers want to go wheel to wheel with Max Verstappen? How many of the other drivers trust him? How many of those other drivers on the grid want to be involved in accidents? You see, these drivers have grown up in motor racing and they've come through the formulas, and there's a good chance they've all been involved in their fair share of incidents. And you don't like it. You want to avoid being in them sorts of incidents because anything can happen. You don't know the outcome of some of these things, and sometimes you can end up with some pretty bad injuries, as we've seen in motor racing. So what you do, you adhere to the rules of engagement to try and minimise the chance of that sort of thing happening. Max Verstappen doesn't give a shit. You try and challenge Max Verstappen when you're in a position where you're like, okay, yeah, I've done enough for you to now have to yield here. He doesn't. So what does that do? That risks then a collision because he's just not yielding. That's not okay. That is not okay. That's not motorsport. Now, if you want to take part in bloody stock car racing, where you can just smash into each other, well, go and do it. But that's not open wheel racing. That's not Formula One car racing. And I think you'll find in a lot of motor racing where it's an expensive sport, and if you're paying 300 grand a year to get your car prepared so you can race in a series, if you're up against a competitor that's quite happy to just bash into you or ram you off the track rather than adhere to the rules of engagement of motor racing, they're not going to be very popular. And there's going to be people in that paddock that's not going to tolerate that.
I think there's an interesting point here, because if you go back, and I'm going to pick first five occasions where Max has basically thrown it down the inside. And if you just watch, this is going back to Imola. So as they head down to the apex of Tabarot, he has this style where he goes in, watch his hands.
So Chandok tries to validate it by saying, oh, it's a style, where he goes in, look at his hands, and it's understeer, understeer, understeer. Simple fact is, you're going too fast. Okay? If there is a car on the outside of you and they're side by side with you, then you go through that corner side by side. Which means if you're on the inside, you have to take a tighter line around that corner. As Martin Brundle himself said when commentating on the 2023 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Therefore, if you've got to take a tighter line, you have to slow your car down more so that it turns on that tighter line. If you don't slow it, it will drift wide. But instead of saying that, Chandok goes, oh, and Max carries so much extra speed and it's understeer, understeer, understeer. Right, it's because you're going too fast. Right? You've got a car on your right side, he's challenging for your position. Rather than slow down, no, you carry on. You just fuck it across there, knowing that you're just going to go across the track, run him out of track room, and you don't give a shit. That is not okay. You don't see the other drivers doing that. You'll see other drivers going round corners like this and two cars make it around side by side. But Max runs the other car off the track because he will not yield. That is not okay. That is not okay. And this, you'll see 5 examples of it. And the 6th example, which is Silverstone, isn't like that at all. But Chandok says that Lewis is chucking his car up the inside when actually Lewis's car is the one that's slowing down. He's clearly putting his foot on the brake, and Max is the car that's shooting ahead again and trying to chop Lewis off. So it's not Lewis chucking his car anywhere. But again, Chandok is validating.
Understeer, understeer, and he goes all the way out. And that effect...
Because you've gone in too fast. You needed to take a tighter line because you've got a car on your outside. You needed to slow down more than that, Max. But you don't do so. You stay on the gas.
Effectively leaves the car on the outside, in all of these cases Lewis, with no room to go but over the outside rumble strip.
So that was Imola, which we saw in my first video, yesterday's video. Next one, Spain, which will be in the next video.
Same in Barcelona, heading down the start-finish straight as we head down towards that first apex. Again, just watch.
So we're coming down to that first corner. Lewis Hamilton is on the racing line, okay? And Max is on the inside, but he's not made it halfway alongside Lewis, so therefore he's not entitled to be left space. He needs to have made it halfway alongside Lewis to be entitled, in which case, if he makes it halfway alongside Lewis, Lewis has to take a wider line around the corner to give space for Max. But at the braking zone, because Max is not there, Max needs to say, oh, I've not made it to where I need to be. I've got to back out of this one. So Max puts his foot on the brake. Lewis takes the racing line around the corner. Max slots in behind him. That is what you will see every other driver do. But instead of that, no, Max stays on the gas, taking too much speed into the corner once again, not able to take a tight line around the corner because he's gone in too fast again, because he just will not yield, and therefore he shoots across the track, leaving no room for Lewis Hamilton. So Lewis has to back out, otherwise there will be a certain crash. So that's the second time, twice. Second incident where the other driver has to back out, otherwise there's a crash. That is not motor racing. That is not okay.
Max here, he chucks it in down the inside. He's behind Lewis, chucks it in down the inside, but with so much more speed.
It's just disgusting. Oh, but he's got so much more speed, and all the strap-on boys are going, oh yeah, Max has got so much more speed. Look, strap-on boys, this isn't okay. All right, if you went karting and one of your mates, well, you if you've got mates, then, and they're all pricks as well, and they drive like this and just put you into the tyres, you're all going to get thrown off the karting circuit. They won't let you drive like that, trashing their karts up. Okay, it's not motor racing. It's not acceptable.
Lewis has to steer out of the way, and at that point, again, Max understeers out to that white line. Monza, this is before they hit each other and crash.
Before they hit each other, yeah? Before they hit each other.
This is at the chicane. Lewis again on the outside, goes in.
So, two cars side by side going into a corner. So, we've seen this. I could pick out incidents at each of these Grand Prix at these corners, and you will see two cars going around these bends side by side. Because the car on the inside where Max Verstappen is now takes a tighter line, okay, and leaves track room for the car on the outside. But instead, Max doesn't slow his car enough to be able to take that tight line. He goes in too quickly.
Max, watch his hands here. Look at the amount of steering lock.
Doesn't matter the amount of steering lock and his hands, he's gone in too fast. Okay, if I've got a car and I'm going round a motor racing circuit and I decide that my car's capable of doing 300 miles an hour, oh, and he's carrying so much extra speed, and then I get to the first corner and I can't make it round the corner because I'm doing 300 mile an hour. Oh, and it's understeer. No, mate, put your foot on the fucking brake. Slow your car down to a speed where it will make it around the corner. Simple as that. Oh, but he carries so much extra speed and it's understeer. Fuck off, Chandok. You're just a validator.
At this point, he's gone in so quickly that it's understeering all the way out to that white line. He can't.
No. Slow down. Acknowledge that there is a fellow competitor that has slipstreamed you, therefore has managed to get that extra pace to pull up alongside you. They are now in the zone where you have to yield, or you have to leave them track room. One of the two. Those are the rules of engagement of motor racing. But you're not doing anything about it. You're not educating people properly. You're not penalising infringements. Instead, you're letting this person get away with it every single time just so that somebody can take it to Sir Lewis Hamilton. That's what you're doing.
Slow it down enough to give Lewis the room, so Lewis has to go across that runoff area again. And in all of these occasions, I think Lewis somewhat compromises by bailing out, by going over the white line, by going...
Lewis somewhat compromises by bailing out. So tell us, Karun, what would happen if Lewis didn't bail out? Tell us. In all of these occasions, Lewis somewhat compromises by bailing out, by going over the white line. So what's going to happen if he doesn't? I'll tell you what happens if Lewis doesn't do that. Crash. Crash. High-speed crash. Lewis out of the race. Probably Max out of the race as well. But it's a crash. Is anybody going to get injured? We don't know. Did Ayrton Senna look like that was a crash that should have killed somebody? Have we seen worse crashes and the drivers walked away? Of course we have. But Ayrton Senna didn't walk away from that. You don't know what is going to happen in a crash. So really, you've got to avoid a crash and not put your car on a collision course with another car expecting that other car to jump out of the way. But that is what Lewis Hamilton had to do. To avoid a collision, he had to jump out of the way because a driver is dangerous. And you are validating that. And you are educating children in that manner so that they are watching motorsport. They will grow up watching motorsport, aspire to be in motorsport. And actually, even if they're not in motorsport, they're going to get a driving license at some point in time. And we know that teenage boys drive like wankers, trying to emulate their little heroes, okay? They'll get themselves a fucking Vauxhall Corsa and think they're fucking Max Verstappen, right? And they'll drive like dicks. And if they're emulating this style of driving, even more people are going to die on the roads. Because you're not educating people. You're validating. It's fucking disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting.
across the runoff area here. Brazil, turn 4. Again, Hamilton gets a good run on him as they head down the hill. Slow it down, get to the apex. Hamilton...
Right, get to the apex. See, Hamilton goes ahead, and now he seems to be coming back. Why is he coming back? It's because Hamilton is putting his foot on the brake to make it around that corner. If you've got to take a tight line, you've got to be even slower to make it around a tight line around the corner. If you're going around the wider line, you can go a bit faster, right? Hamilton on the wider line is already slowing down. That's why you see Max's car appear to come back at him, because Max does not brake.
Slow it down, get to the apex. Hamilton in front, clearly, but Max, watch his hands here. So he's again carrying a huge amount of...
So if Hamilton needs to slow down to make it round there from a wider line, what does Max need to do? But he doesn't do it. He carries on, stays on the gas, goes in too hot again, meaning you can't make it around the corner at that speed. That is dangerous driving. That should be outlawed. There should be significant penalties for doing that. How many of the drivers do you see doing this?
Speed goes a little bit wide of the apex. And
a little bit wide at the apex. Okay, to all of these boys that think they know something about Silverstone. Oh, Lewis understeered at Silverstone, right? Right. What we're talking about is once you got past that midpoint of the corner, this car's still going on beyond that. At Silverstone, the collision took place before the corner. You don't know whether Lewis Hamilton was on course to make it around that corner or not, because he never got there before the collision. So you're coming up with a load of bollocks.
And there, Hamilton has no choice but to bail out of it. Now, I'll just go back a frame because you'll watch.
So there you go. No choice. Lewis sometimes compromises by bailing out and going over the white line. Well, it's because he has to. Otherwise, there'll be a crash. He'll be out of the race. He's a 7-time world champion at that point in time. He's had however many seasons in the sport. He's a bit of an older head. He's a bit more pragmatic. You stay in the game. You try to realise you don't crash out. When we get to Azerbaijan, you'll see how experienced he is. You'll see what they say about Lewis Hamilton in Azerbaijan. How many consecutive point scoring finishes he had. That's not by coincidence. Because yes, he'd got a decent car in the Mercedes that had clearly been reliable as well, because that's a factor. But also, you have to use your head. You use your experience and do what it is you need to do. And what you need to do is accumulate points. You accumulate the most amount of points, and that's the way you become the world champion. And that's what Lewis Hamilton knows he needs to do to stay in the race, to accumulate the points, not end up in an accident where you're risking injury and you're going to get nothing out of the weekend. But he's having to now be in a situation where he's up against a guy that's quite happily running him off the track, risking accidents unless he jumps out of the way. It means that Lewis has to race in such a manner that he has to have such a speed differential to make sure when he overtakes, he has to be clear of the guy. He cannot risk it in any way being a 50-50 because the other guy's just going to hit him. So you can't just go... You've got to really, his approach has got to be so measured in dealing with Max Verstappen. It's obscene. Every driver's the same. No driver can trust Max Verstappen. The only reason it's been okay in 2022 and 2023 is because the performance differential of that Red Bull has been obscene, that Max just blitzes by them anyway, and they just know that. So it's like there's no point in going wheel to wheel and risking having a crash with this prick, because actually we'll get onto any straight and he'll just blitz past us anyway. So he's not my race.
Watch Max's hands on the left-hand side. There, he winds the lock on, but he's got so much more speed, he just runs off the road, and Hamilton has nowhere to go. He can't cut across because obviously Max is right there. And finally, let's go to Saudi last weekend. First of all, from the helicopter, Lewis clearly in front at that point.
Right, so we're going motor racing. We need to drive around the circuit, okay, which means you need to slow your car down to get round each corner of that circuit, Max.
He's clearly in front, but again, Verstappen, wide of the apex. Look there, he misses the apex, and he just carries the speed, has that moment, rears lock up, goes.
He just carries the speed, has that moment. Look at the way he's describing it. That is disgusting. That move there is disgusting. And you look at the context of this. You know, with 4 races to go, Lewis Hamilton had to win all 4. Okay, this is assuming that Max was going to finish all 4. Okay, Lewis had to win all 4. And in those 4 races, Max was willing to take him out in Brazil. Max was willing to take him out in Saudi with this and the brake test. And Max was willing to take him out on lap 1 in Abu Dhabi. Michael Schumacher was disqualified for an entire season for attempting to take out his title rival. They looked at that and they said, right, you're disqualified from the entire season. I'm going to do a video about that. And we'll compare the move that Schumacher put in with what Max is doing. Who's saying anything about that?
Across there, Lewis has no choice but to follow him. So that's 5 examples of basically a similar instance. Now,
Lewis has no choice, and the reason he has no choice is because if Lewis stayed on his line to go around that corner the way that Lewis intended to, he would have been hit. That is not acceptable. 2 cars can go around that bend. The car on the inside has to slow down, take the tight line to give track room to the car on the outside. They're the rules of engagement of the sport. Max Verstappen goes all the way across the line of the track, okay? Totally across the line of the other driver because he's carrying in too much speed because he refuses to slow down and yield position. It's disgusting. It should not be allowed in the sport.
now, if we look at Silverstone, on this occasion, Hamilton was the one on the inside, and he's the one.
Right. I'm going to say that he's chucking it. He's got himself almost level, and now, which car are you going to see shooting ahead? In all of those examples, which car did you see shooting ahead? Because you're going to now say Hamilton chucks it. 5 times. Imola. Which car, right, when 10 cars are about level, which car then started shooting ahead? Imola, Max Verstappen. Spain. Them cars, they weren't even level. Max Verstappen was not even halfway alongside. Which car shot ahead? Max Verstappen. Third one was Monza. 2 cars side by side going into that chicane. Which car shot ahead? Max Verstappen. Fourth one, Brazil. Lewis Hamilton was ahead. Which car on the inside shot up there across him and across the track? Max Verstappen. Saudi. Lewis Hamilton got himself ahead. Which car shot up the inside, went ahead? Max Verstappen. 5 times. That's chucking it. What does Lewis Hamilton do now?
Who chucked it up there, but
Lewis has chucked it. Is Lewis the one that shot up and gone ahead of the car that's on the outside? No, he's not, has he? It's the car on the outside that's chucked it and chucked himself across the nose of Lewis Hamilton. But you're describing it as if, oh, Lewis chucks it this time. Utter bullshit.
Verstappen, watch his hands at this point. He is turned in, and while, of course, Lewis missed the apex.
Yeah, he's turned in, he's chopped across the line of his opponent. And Lewis didn't do that once. Every time it's Max chucking it. And look at what you're trying to do now, Karun.
And was, given predominantly the blame, and by the stewards given a 10-second penalty. And I agree with that. He was
And I agree that Lewis was to blame. Thanks for that, Karun.
predominantly a blame because he chucked it up the inside.
Didn't chuck it up the inside. Lying.
And went in too quick. I do wonder whether Max would think about the fact that if he was more compromising in the way that Lewis was in those 5 examples and just gave Lewis a bit more space.
It's not about compromising and giving space. It's the rules of engagement of motorsport that you, as the broadcaster, need to educate the fans with. But you refuse to do so because you are validators, validating an agenda.
Yes, he would have lost the place. Yes, he would have finished second and scored 18 points instead of ending up on the wall.
Yes, he would have finished seconds. This is lap 1 of a 52 lap Grand Prix. Can you predict who is going to finish first and second by what happens at a turn on the first lap, Karoon? Yes, if he hadn't have done that, he'd have finished second. Do we know? Do we know that he wouldn't have finished first? Do we know that he wouldn't have broken down? Do we know that when he'd gone into the pits, he'd have got a wheel nut cross-threaded and got a 20-second pit stop and ended up third? We don't know any of this. We don't know. So don't just say, oh, if he hadn't have done this, he'd have finished second. He still could have won. But he drove like a dick and put himself out of the race. Okay? That's what happened, but you're going to tell us now.
But then he would have arrived here in Abu Dhabi with an 18-point lead. And I think that's an important point to make, is that they've got a very different style of racing this season in terms of their wheel-to-wheel battles. So, yeah.
Oh, they've got a very different style and one's just not acceptable. They've got a very different style. So tell me, on the grid of 20 drivers, who else drives in that style? Well, they don't, because it's not acceptable. But Max gets away with it. The golden boy, the manufactured one. But you want people to go away with the message, oh, if Lewis hadn't have taken Max out at Silverstone, then Max would have got to Abu Dhabi with an 18-point lead. So the fact that we fixed it for Max at Abu Dhabi, that's karma. Because Max fully deserved it because he led the most amount of laps this season. All part of the bullshit narrative. All part of the bullshit narrative. Anyway, next video is going to do Spain, Monaco, Azerbaijan. So you'll hear the commentary from Sky Sports and again what the narrative is. It's all pro Max, all anti Lewis Hamilton. It's all bullshit. See you in a bit.